week on Silver Screen Queens, we cover the 1999 film The Blair Witch Project. Found video footage tells the tale of three film students, Heather Donahue, Joshua Leonard, Michael C. Williams, who have traveled to a small town to collect documentary footage about the Blair Witch, a legendary local murderer. Over the course of several days, the students interview townspeople and gather clues to support the tale's veracity. Dum, bum, bum.
All right, witches, strap in, because if you haven't put this together yet, this movie is about to get spoiled. So get ready.
My name is Emily, and this week I was the guest on the Leo B. Gyllenhaal podcast talking about horror films.
Yeah, how'd that go?
Oh my god, that sounds amazing.
It went really well. It was delightful. Joaquin was the one who interviewed me. His name is Joaquin Pennyworth, and I was too afraid to ask if that was a comic book reference. I'm pretty sure it's someone in the comic book universe.
My name is Stephanie, and today I learned about how stones emit frequencies. A stone like uranium emits such a high frequency, it will kill you.
I'm Blaine, and I literally just played Animal Crossing all day. My thumb hurts. I don't have any pants in the video game because I spend all my time picking up sticks, and I don't know. This is a pandemic.
I just want to play genital jousting. You're a dick and balls, and you try to bump other dick and balls in their buttholes.
It is such a precious game. I am so excited that you introduced that to us.
Unlike these characters in this movie who don't get to rub any genitals, which is sad. I do want to say one fun fact that I know especially Blaine will love. The shooting for this movie finished on Halloween night.
How fucking perfect is that?
Yeah.
I'm here for it.
They went to Denny's. It was October 31st, 1997, and they went to Denny's for their first hearty meal in over a week. And they had been in the woods for all that time, obviously shooting, but
yeah, and it only took 8 days to shoot. Like, how crazy is that?
Insane.
Yeah. And this, does anybody else? So I was 11 when this came out.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah. I remember that it was so captivating because, you know, most people, if you know anything about horror movies, you've heard of this movie, you've seen this movie. It might not be a staple, but I feel like it's one of the really first really well done POV handheld found footage that did a really good job on a really low budget. It ended up grossing
$248 million.
$248 million. And I mean, that's just insane. And I think the actors were paid $1,000 a day. Living in Maryland, this movie, this was huge. I believed in this. I thought it was real.
I remember because when it came out, Emily and I were 8 years old. Just tiny babies. But like the hype around it was so well done to the point that so many people thought it was actual found footage.
Right.
So like Heather's mom in real life got like sympathy letters and cards and stuff because everybody thought her daughter was actually missing and or dead.
Yep.
So like I remember like my parents came home from the theaters because they actually saw it. Can you imagine seeing this in theaters? How much fun that would be?
Oh my God.
And
if
honestly,
only.
Yeah. And not only that, but to see it in theaters in 1999 when theater going was still such a thing. Like that,
it was
it was an experience.
Like going to Blockbuster and picking out a movie was the thing to do that gave you like so much joy of time spent doing that. This is a lost art, going to the movies.
It's just legendary. I mean, this stands the test of time, and regardless of what came after it, this is the found footage movie.
Absolutely. And I would argue that this is a horror staple. Mm-hmm. I think if you're like gonna be into horror, this has got to be on your list. You have an opinion about this movie, even if you don't love it.
Oh yeah.
I loved this movie when it first came out. I totally thought it was real. I was one of those people.
It is short in actual runtime, but when you're watching it, it feels long because
it's
torturous. It's so they like basically they descend into madness, and you can kind of feel it. And the way that each of them deal with what's going on is fascinating.
It is so insidious in how it makes you uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Like
Yes.
the
Yep.
fact that it is handheld camera, like
Yep.
that makes you unsettled to begin with because you can't tell where the camera's going. You can't get a real handle on where you're at any given point in time.
Yep.
And the audio's bad.
Yep.
Yes.
And I like that one of the facts I read was like 2 out of every 10 moviegoers requested like a refund because they felt sick from the handheld, from
Some
watching it
extra
on a
funny.
handheld. And I'm like, first of all, stop being a bitch. Second of all, if you have vertigo, don't go out of the house. Heather Donahue is beautiful. I think she's like
She does
naturally
everything
such
right in this movie.
a pretty
Yeah.
girl. And also the 90s attire. It's almost like if Clueless, very poor
Poor.
Clueless. Yes.
Yeah, it's like Empire Records or something.
Yeah, it's like
It
Podunk
totally is.
Empire Records / Clueless.
I love that they let all the actors keep their names.
Yep.
Yes.
All their names.
To make
Cool
it feel
stuff.
more natural. And
Well,
also, like,
yeah.
someone could be like, oh, I knew her.
Mhm.
Shit.
Yeah.
Like, I love that little element. I think that was really well done.
Meeting the three of them, you find out that Heather, and I like that she's a fucking boss because she's the boss of this.
Oh,
She's
God,
the director.
yeah.
Josh is her cameraman, and Michael is his friend. Getting together all the equipment that they're borrowing and begging and stealing to use to do this. They're in the motel. They're prepping to go out.
Yeah.
They're like drinking, and she's like, "I wish we had a joint."
Do you want to read the intro text first?
In October of 1994, 3 student filmmakers disappeared in the woods near Burkittsville, Maryland, while shooting a documentary. A year later, their footage was found.
I do have a description of the supposed legend.
Do it.
Which could be interesting.
Ooh.
So,
that sounds great.
According to legend, the Blair Witch is the ghost of Ellie Kedward of the late 1700s, whom several children accused of luring them into her home to draw blood from them. Kedward is found guilty of witchcraft, banished from the village during a particularly harsh winter, and presumed dead. By midwinter, all of Kedward's accusers, along with half of the town's children, vanish. Fearing a curse, the townspeople flee Blair and vow never to utter Ellie Kedward's name again. In 1825, 11 witnesses testified to seeing a pale woman's hand reach up and pull 10-year-old Eileen Treacle into Tappy East Creek. Her body is never recovered, and for 13 days after the drowning, the creek is clogged with bundles of sticks. In 1886, 8-year-old Robin Weaver is missing. Search parties are dispatched. Bodies are found weeks later at Coffin Rock, tied together at the arms and legs and disemboweled. In 41, a total of 7 children are abducted from Burkittsville. A hermit named Rustin Parr walks into a local market and tells the people that he is finally finished. After the police hike for 4 hours to his secluded house in the woods, they find the bodies of 7 missing children in the cellar. Each child has been ritualistically murdered and disemboweled. Parr admits to everything in detail, telling authorities that he did it for an old woman ghost who occupied the woods near his house. He is quickly convicted and hanged.
Damn.
And that's the story.
Beautiful.
That's
and
amazing.
Yeah, right? And that brings us to these 3 kids, basically. They're off to, in a weekend, they're going to record an entire documentary. So they're interviewing townsfolks in Burkittsville.
Which ballsy, by the way, to do it like
Right?
do it in the shortest amount of time possible. Full documentary, 2 days.
They're children.
And that's, exactly, and that's what kind of lends that very ambitious, very naive look at this. So Heather is very clearly the boss bitch of it, like Stephanie said. She's the ringleader. She's holding the camera the most. And so we're introduced to Heather, Josh, her friend, and then Josh introduces Mike, and they all travel to Burkittsville. We talk to a little old man who tells a story of Russ Parr. And so from there, they also talk to a mom, and the child is like
picking.
We have to talk about this.
This kid's picking its nose for like the whole time.
And then he's smacking his mom
knows
with a
something.
Oh, all right. Talk about
it. Because she's getting into how the kids were murdered, and that's when Heather starts covering the mom's mouth and says, "No, mom, no."
Yeah,
no.
It's crazy.
And like every time she talks about how the kids died, Heather's like, no. And I'm like, that's interesting.
So, also fun fact, this is and I hope this is real, but this is a fun fact that I found I did like a little online digging, and they said that the film's cast went to interview the locals, and they actually were made, the cast, these 3 actors were made to believe that this was a real legend. And so the people
Right.
that they supposedly interviewed, some of these people were plants that the directors were like, and they knew what, and the mom did a great job of doing, you know, a
Yes.
very realistic, like,
Oh,
I
yeah.
know about this. And then they do interview this lady that her name is Mary Brown, and the actress's name is Patricia Decoux, who
Oh my
actually
God.
looks the most like a real witch I've ever seen in my life.
Oh, I hope to look like her.
She looks
I know.
like an
That's the
actual
goal.
like 1700s witch, and she lives in a trailer in
I
Burkittsville,
love
Maryland. She tells them that she saw the Blair Witch one day near Tappy Creek, which is the least scary creek to be a witch near.
It's like Hansel and Gretel.
And she tells
Mhm.
them that the Blair Witch was a form of a hairy, half human, half animal. And I was like, no, it's just me after quarantine. You don't
No,
understand.
it's like I want to be her.
Mary Brown.
Right.
Blaine
She
is Mary
sounds
Brown.
amazing.
No, I
And-
want
Or
to
the
be
Blair
like
Witch.
the witch. Yeah.
She wants to be the Blaine Witch.
The Blaine Witch. Oh my
Yeah.
God.
Before we meet Mary Brown, there's that guy that describes basically the entire film. Children were led into a basement of a shed in the middle of the woods, 2 by 2, and they're murdered. One face turned to face the corner towards the wall, the other murdered.
Yeah, so he's telling that story.
He,
Yeah.
he lays that story out.
I love how just these townspeople, even if we're like assuming they're plants, it's like if someone came up to any random person and asked them any question and they have a full 360-degree knowledge of
Yes.
anything happening. Like, do you know about JFK? Well, I know every
Like,
single
oh, yeah, I was
theory.
there.
Let's get into it.
Cloudy Wednesday afternoon. And I was wearing my nice socks.
It's like, ma'am, you're
Yeah, like,
15.
all
Calm
right.
down.
Right.
Because they introduced us to all their like equipment that they're using in the beginning of this. At the end of the film, they actually they returned one of the cameras they used. They pulled a Nordstrom. They returned one of the cameras they used
So funny.
to Circuit City. And so if you bought a video camera in Maryland at a Circuit City between 98 and 99, it's a good chance it was used on this film.
Also, I want to give a shout out to the 90s Halloween decorations in all the shop windows. Like that, I was so hard. Like,
Yeah,
I
can't even imagine.
I miss those days so much. It's like so nostalgic and so like just Halloween everywhere, and we didn't have to worry about like Satan or anything like that. And we we're just like, hey, let's just get some goddamn candy and fuck everybody else.
Like literally, if I
yeah.
had known you when you got married, I would have literally scoured the world to find the most 90s scarecrow pumpkin head looking thing. And it would have made your goddamn day. And I just love that about you.
My day, my life.
After they interview all these insane people, they go back to the motel. They kind of get a little drunk. They park. And by the way, this vehicle.
Oh, I don't know. I think Dwight Schrute would like cream all over that car.
Oh, I think it
Ooh,
was
yeah.
that car. So they park the car and they go into the woods with a map.
I'm not a camper. I do not camp. This movie is my worst nightmare.
Yes, 100%.
But is it real that you like when you're camping, you just like abandon your car on the side of the road and just hoof it?
It depends on how
Jesus.
deep in the woods you are. So my husband, Doug, he hikes 65 miles at a time. Like he'll take a week and just go hiking
fuck?
for 65 miles.
What?
He's an alien. I don't know.
Is he
And he comes
Michael
back
Scott with his
in
pants on his
clothes
head?
that I dropped him off in. It's a whole thing, basically. But he usually hires someone to drive him into the woods and drop him off, which honestly is typically the scariest part. Typically, if you're going to hike and camp, you don't end and start at the same place.
Right. They go to a creek where the Coffin Rock massacre happened and they filmed there. And I just want to say,
Yeah.
I want to name something in my life Coffin Rock.
What's the name of my dick?
Yeah, fuck yeah, it is. Sorry, I got real amped.
On their way to Coffin Rock, they run into two fishermen who like can't agree on whether or not the woods are haunted.
I love
So
that.
the one's like, damn fool, kids never learn.
Right.
Because they repeat it like 4 times too.
Yeah.
And he's the one who's like, yeah, I mean, you're going to get murdered. They all do.
Of course you're polarized on it. You're
Yeah.
contesting whether or not like these children have been murdered as opposed to like
Right.
I don't know, anything else.
Right, literally
also-
anything. I do want to say the one guy that you were talking about, they were fishing. This
Yeah.
man, if there is the opposite of a person with an ass, this is that
I
man.
know.
It was like
concave.
it's like a flat screen television on both sides. It was. You wake up in the morning with them. They camped. They seem like they're pretty jazzed about where they set up their tents. And then they wake up in the morning and Josh is like, I heard a noise. I swear I heard laughing. And fun fact, the crackling sounds were made by the director and his friends walking up to the perimeter of the tent and breaking sticks and tossing them in a bunch of directions.
I feel like I remember them saying that the cast was like legitimately afraid of like bobcats and bears.
They had walkie-talkies that they talked to them on, and they got lost a couple times, the actual actors. But I mean, they were honestly genuinely isolated doing a lot of this.
I need to go on a small tangent. First of all, I mean, as you may have gathered from the last like 3 minutes, camping is not my thing. I fucking hate camping.
Nope.
The idea of camping sends my shoulders straight up to my earlobes. And so this whole premise sounds like the most stressful thing. Like, forget the fucking witch shit. Like, that is okay by me. I would happily die in a basement of an abandoned house. For sure. Like, that's fine.
Easy.
But
I feel like you'd lure me down there because you'd be like, I want us to be together forever in hell, and it'd be amazing.
Well, yeah, and like I want to get away from these two fucking guys. Like, please,
for sure.
Come down to this basement. We shall die happily.
You'd be like reading tarot cards, like, hey, you want to play Yahtzee? Like,
Yep.
What's up, guys?
Imagine you're cramped in a tent with two men you don't know. They're recording you peeing. For some reason, they need to get shot in your ass every couple, minutes. Also, Mike's chest hair. What is happening there?
Oh, it was horrific. His chest hair was like patchy like my husband's shoulders. Like, I don't understand. These are clearly not Jews because you have a thick blossomous bosom of hair when you're a Jew.
Boy.
They are walking around, they're looking for this old graveyard, and Heather is telling them that she knows where they're going, and she has the map.
She's very
and I have a strong feeling about this, and I want to get your take on this. I get the idea of, like, this is her project, and she's, like, gung-ho, and she wants to get it done, and she's trying to get them a shortcut, but it becomes clear that they're lost, and they're starting to get pissed at her. They are lost, and she's, like, saying they're not lost.
The only reason that they're annoyed at her is because she's a woman. Like, if one of the guys was like, I know where I'm going, they wouldn't ask. But she is so annoying.
Because she's, like, saying that it's going to be, like, we'll be there in, like, an hour and a half, and then it's, like, night, and they're not there. And they're like, are you sure you know where we're going? And that's the only thing. That's my only problem, where if I were with her, I'd be pissed.
Well, in the entire time, both Josh and Mike are very annoyed with Heather. They, from the get-go, don't trust that she knows what she's doing, whether or not she ends up getting them lost. When it turns out that they have even an inkling that they actually are lost, they immediately turn on her. And she's the one who's supposed to have all the solutions. They don't actually come up with anything. Neither of them decides to try and take the reins, because when they do, they realize they're absolutely terrified and have no idea what to do. So they're no better than her, but they insist that she's in the wrong this entire time.
Yeah. It's hard to stand up for her because I think she's annoying, but she's no more annoying than they are.
If I put myself in her shoes, she's very ambitious about this project. She's hoping it's going to pan out. She's trying to wrangle these two emotionally stunted fucking bitches. And at the same time, she's trying to read this map that looks like it's Braille.
I've been that woman where I am very passionate about something. I want to do something. But of course, in order to do this, I have to team up with some men who already know everything, and they're just doing me a courtesy by following along. But the moment I don't do things the way they would have intended or the way that they think it should be done, they turn their backs on me, and they they immediately throw me under the bus. And I struggle with this in every horror movie. I don't know how the fuck I would act in the woods, like, and I don't know where I'm going. I don't know if I would try to put on a front, like, yeah, this is all we have to do, because you're also in that mindset of, well, somebody has to be the level-headed one. Somebody needs to make a decision, and these motherfuckers aren't going to do it. I kind of get it. Everybody sucks, and everything's awful.
The flaw in the characters is what makes it believable. It's found footage.
Yes. This is the point when they're lost and they see a bunch of stacked rocks.
They do mention that there were 7 children missing, and there are 7 of these little grapes.
And so in the evening, they build a fire, and they're making some food, and they're, like, talking, and they're having a better time.
Guess what they're talking about around the fire? They're talking about Gilligan's Island and how if they had a beer, they'd have orgies.
Soft orgy.
Soft.
So then they go back to the pile of rocks, and I think one of them knocks it over. And if I knocked over,
Yep.
I am putting you all in danger. I just touched this thing. Like,
Yeah, I would sacrifice myself to the witch at that
I
point.
think it was Josh because he's the first one gone.
It was Josh.
Yeah.
And then Heather tries to reassemble it. She's like, you can never be too careful. And
Yeah,
they like
bitch.
laugh it off and go back
Oh
to camp.
God. So the next morning they get up and they are hearing noises. And they're just like, oh, it's just like local
Yes.
people. And it's like, you think somebody's followed you out this far? So they're just shrugging this all off.
They
They're like,
immediately jump on Heather's back.
yeah.
Right.
Like, you're crazy. It's all in your head.
It's also worth mentioning that it's been raining for like 2 days at this
Yes,
point. So
that's
they're
right.
all getting like feisty with each other.
It's interesting that like they're sharing the tent.
All
Like,
of Willy Wonka's grandparents in one, like,
yeah.
50 square foot thing.
I feel like this is the only way they could inject some tiny homage to like sexuality that we are made to expect in horror movies. Like there's little scenes when they're having fun and they're like smiling at each other. Nobody would fuck these two guys. If this was I would not pay for this gangbang. I would not. And that's the sign that it's not good.
So maybe now's a good time to get into the expectation of sexuality in horror movies, because based on content alone, there is no sexuality in this movie. None.
Correct.
Nope.
Right.
Everybody is covered head to toe. The only thing we see is Mike's hairy nipple, and then that's it. The mere suggestion that it's a horror movie, like at least me watching it, I was like, okay, it's a horror movie. Somebody's gonna fuck. The years and years behind that, where it's like, oh, 2 guys, 1 girl. The fact that there's any women at all, yeah, we're gonna see some shit.
Right.
So I really appreciate that while the context, like reading between the lines, they really hung that bait, but they didn't give in.
Trying to make a movie, they're hungry, they're angry at each other, they're cold. Like the last thing on their mind is pursuing a romantic storyline. It's well done because it's genuine.
Hey everyone, so I love prayer candles with like celebrities and movie stars on them and everything. So I found this cool Etsy shop that sells these amazing prayer candles with like all of the horror characters you could ever dream of on them. It's called Black Flame Candles, and their prices start at $8.99, and they have like Vincent Price, they have Creature of the Black Lagoon, they have The Bride and Frankenstein's Monster. Seriously, this is the way to go. I'm thinking about getting one with Pinhead on it because, of course, like, he just tore my soul apart, so I definitely need it. So that's Black Flame Candles on Etsy, and you need to get your hands on some. Thanks. They like open up the tent and there are 3 piles of rocks for each of them.
Mm-hmm.
And how they haven't put those puzzle pieces together is beyond me.
I know.
Like,
yeah,
one for each of them. Like, yeah. So it implies that, you know, their graves have been dug, their time is limited. They decide they're gonna just head back to the car, but it turns out they lost the map. If we think back to the day before, Josh was like, just give me the map. I'm going to read the map. And so Heather gave Josh the map. We didn't ever see anybody give the map back to her. When it's decided that the map is lost, like there's this whole thing where the camera is on Heather. She is wringing her hands because she can't find the map. It was supposed to be in her pocket and it's not. And so both Josh and Mike, like, jump on her like this is the most irresponsible thing of all things to do. I can't believe you did this. We came out here for you, like, and you lost the map. And like also, that's when we get into like people are expecting us back home. If we're not home today, like they're gonna come looking for us.
Also, I like the line, goes back to our discussion of like sexuality in this. Mike says, I'm not gonna go in your pants to look for the map. Because he like paused there and I was like,
it's also one of those things where if you put any number of guys in a situation where there is like less women than them, they're going to immediately sexualize those women, and those women have intense sexual appetites that they simply cannot quench. And it's
Right.
the men making fun of the women for all of this. And of course, like, Heather wants Josh in her pants, and that's just not something he's going to do for her.
They're crossing a lot of fucking logs on a river.
Oh my God.
How are we gonna do it? Bitch, just concentrate. Like, how about we stop talking and we walk across this goddamn log? But
One
like,
foot at a time.
Mike is starting to go fucking bonkers.
They're starting
and
to
we're gonna
lose
find
it.
out why.
Yeah.
They're walking across a fucking other log. She falls in, her shoes get all fucked. Mike admits that he took the map and fucking threw it into the creek. It's almost like, I have to shame you so bad because you didn't know that I'm gonna fuck us.
Yep.
Yeah. He was
It
like,
was
the map did us
like-
no good. And she's like, I'm the only one who knew how to fucking read the map. What the fuck did you do? And like,
That's
the fight
right.
that ensued was crazy.
That's
She
mansplaining
goes
to the
full
degree.
scream yell.
She-
She's like,
oh.
it may have been useless to you, you idiot, but it mattered to me. And he's
Yeah.
just like, I'm sorry. And it's
Yeah.
just like, she scream yells. And
Yeah.
is just like, what? Because he also laid it on thick. He was like, what an irresponsible thing for you to do to
Yeah.
lose
Yeah.
the map. Meanwhile, he fucking set her up.
Basically, you're coming to the point where you're understanding that they're stuck in here because whatever this being is wants them stuck here.
I will say that I think that witchcraft is involved at this point. I think that their moods are being affected. I think their
Mhm.
sanity is being affected.
Really quickly, they pivot from having this horrible fight where they're screaming. That's how I screamed when I've had like a screaming match. They find a clearing where they find all these stick figures. And I'm like, what broke ass doll factory is this? This is something. They find these stick figures. They're from trees. There's some in the shape of runes. There's some that are meant to look like people. They're filming them. Then basically they're like, we need to get the fuck out of here.
Well, and I think I love that at that point, Heather is like, I think it's safe to say at this point that we're lost. And I'm like, really?
What? She is the only one embracing this, and the dudes are trying so hard to be like, this is not what this is. I'm just here for a job. This is going to be nothing. I'm going to get home to my fucking busted ass Pontiac. So they're starting to learn from their mistakes. So they learned that if they had lit a fire the past few nights
Yeah.
and some shit went down, that now they know, like, let's not light any fires. But it's all, you know that they already started the
Too
fucking...
late.
Ryan started the fire. It was always burning since the world was turning. It's already happening.
Because their fates were sealed with the 3 piles of rocks. You're
Yeah,
already
that's
dead.
it. At night, they wake up and they start hearing kids talking and a baby screaming.
Yeah.
Not only that, but they're still inside the tent, and there is something outside of the tent slamming on it, like fucking with the tent. Can you imagine? Heather like got out and ran away.
Yep.
The balls on her, man. The balls.
I know. The sounds of the children was actually a recording from the director's mother's house. There was like a playground near her house. So those are like actually kids playing, and the tape was played over boom boxes in the forest overnight to freak out the actors. So they had no idea that was coming. And it like disembodied children's laughter. The most horrifying thing in the world.
Heather yells out of the tent as she's running out of the tent. Fun fact.
She's like, hello!
She yells, oh my God, what the fuck is that? What the fuck is that? The cameraman was supposed to pan to the left, and there was actually a woman in a white gown who were assuming, but the cameraman forgot to pan, and so they didn't reshoot that scene. So you see her scream, what the fuck is that? But you don't see what she's seeing, which would have been a woman. And I actually think this works in their favor.
Oh, yeah.
And your focus is
I
her,
honestly
and she's
think
freaking
seeing
out.
the woman in the dress would have just cheapened it. I don't want to see anything.
100%.
I only want it from the POV.
Wouldn't it just have been cool if like they panned and it's like Jason and he's just waving dorkily? Like, hi.
Whenever Heather shoots out of the tent in the middle of the night, the
Right.
Josh and Mike follow. So they hide until the sun rises, and then they like run back to camp. And it turns out all of Josh's stuff is strewn across the camp that they made. And so for some reason, like Josh sees like a glisten on his stuff, and he thinks that they've like poured his water all over his stuff. And then he leans down and touches it, and it turns out it's slime. And they can't figure out what that slime is or why it's there. to us, the people like at home viewing this, it's clearly a tracking mechanism to find him later.
I just want to see the behind the scenes footage where it's the Blair Witch like fucking rubbing one out on his backpack.
Right?
Wouldn't that be sick? She's like, Beelzebub!
Okay, that was me.
So that slime is actually KY jelly.
KY, hit us up. There's a lot of jerking off in horror.
Please.
Yeah, and quarantine, so you know. After that, Mike tries to attack her to get her camera from her.
That was terrifying.
They're becoming unhinged at this point.
Yeah, and he's been belligerent this entire time.
That line that Josh says, see why you like the video camera so much, it's not quite reality. That's
Yeah.
so good.
Yes, that's very real, and that's that is probably one of my favorite scenes in the entire movie. So after that, Josh still has the camera on Heather, and he's interrogating her, like, "Hey, is this the shot you wanted? Is this what you wanted? Are you happy?" And Mike, who has been the instigator through the entire movie, says, "Guys, let's not fight. I'm tired of the fighting. Let's just stop."
Yeah.
And I wanted to
Right.
punch him in the fucking face.
Oh, thanks.
So I love Josh's little like monologue where he's like, "There's a fucking witch. She keeps leaving trinkets outside your door. You took one of them, and now she's following you." So
And I
great.
like how he says it's impossible to vanish in America, and I'm like, honey, it's 1999. You could still be murdered, and no one will find you for a
You
million
did
years.
already.
You did.
People vanish all the time. Like in the
Oh.
woods. That's like a thing. That's a way to
And
die.
that just also like lends to their being so young and naive.
The point in the movie where you actually lose hope and everything becomes realized. They're walking and they walked all fucking day, like 15 hours they hiked. And
Ugh.
they come back to the same river they crossed the day before. So they realize they've been going in circles and they all just fucking collapse. And this is the part where no, they're not getting out. Like, and she's like, it's not the same log.
So Mike and Heather are just like screaming and Heather's crying, and so they decide they're not going to get anywhere by the end of the night if they ended up back in the same place. So they're going to hole up for the night, and they build camp again. And like that night they're kind of talking about how fucking frustrating and how fucking creepy it is that the night before they were in the exact same place setting up camp before all of this shit went down.
Yeah.
And then they start talking about all the food they miss.
Oh,
And
this
like,
is what we
I
would
think
do.
Mike starts talking about his mom's mashed potatoes.
We are in this tent. This is us. What are we
Yeah.
saying is our food?
Mine is my mom's shepherd's pie. Yeah, with a bunch of Worcestershire sauce. Oh God.
Like, I don't think I would want a meal like that. I would want like a cupcake.
My mom makes several different foods in a tagine, which is like a Moroccan dish to make food in, and she makes it sounds gross, but it's really good. It's actually just like chicken with onions and olives, and it's fucking delicious.
Ooh.
And it's like all this like spices.
There's a dish from Rice and Noodles in Lancaster. Do you guys
Yup.
deep fried tofu with
Oh.
lemongrass and like
Oh.
cumin and
Oh.
caramelized onions and jasmine rice.
Oh,
That
I'm
that
sorry,
would
my
be it.
slime just came
That-
out. I'm sorry.
I just say
Night falls again. They wake up and Josh is gone. And they're
Mhm.
like, he went for some time alone. And she's like, no, he wouldn't do that. He could hear me. She was screaming. They can't find him, so they move on. And part of me is like, whoa, this motherfucker.
I think that this is also the point when Heather's really starting to put it together. She has a moment where she's like, and that stuff that was on his bag, like she remembers what I am calling ectoplasm all over
Yeah.
his bag. So she's realizing that like he was marked. I don't know if she remembers yet that he was the one who knocked down the stones, but like she's
We do.
smart.
Yeah.
She's probably putting it together. Last words that Josh said on camera were he wants his mom's mashed potatoes and a piece of ass. Great
Yep.
last words.
Oh shit. That would sound like me saying my last words, honestly.
Yes.
But
really
I will.
would.
They hear him screaming in the night. So basically, like
Mhm.
really quick, you get to night again, and they have no choice but to go to bed. And they hear him screaming, and they can't tell where it's coming from. Also, can I just say from the perspective of the actor, if one were being, let's say, tortured, the screams that were being emitted in the night were not very tortury. They were like, ah.
Well, here's the thing. So I don't think that was actually him.
It was a
I
glamour
mean, like-
spell or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was definitely the witch luring them.
They awaken to find a bundle of sticks wrapped in flannel from Josh's shirt And Heather initially just like yeets it in the distance from the tent.
Yep.
And then Mike has like fully lost his shit at this point. He's like rocking on the ground, repeating like, we'll just keep walking. It'll be fine. And then Heather's like, fuck this. I'm going to go open up that bundle of sticks. And she finds something controversial inside.
Right.
So the actual prop was actual human teeth and hair.
Yes.
Fans argue that it's either a finger, teeth, hair, a tongue, bones, or apparently Josh had a necklace on that a lot of people argue that's what it is. But the actual prop was teeth. I thought it was a finger the first time I
thought it
saw
was a
but it's
finger.
shaky cam, so it's
Oh,
hard to
yeah.
tell. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
I
what
thought it
I
was a
thought
finger.
too. And then the second time I watched it, I thought it was a tongue. It does kind of look like a tongue. She doesn't tell Mike
No.
Exactly.
at all.
And I think it's because she knows Mike's gone.
Yeah.
Oh, he's too far gone.
No, he's gonna lose his goddamn mind. She needs him because if he goes nuts, she's by herself. So she does need him.
It's also a great moment of the female character doing all of the emotional labor.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Because he can't handle it. So she
He
has
can't
to handle it. So she washes her hands and she gets the blood off, and he's like, "What are
Very
you doing?"
Lady Macbeth.
And he's
Mhm.
like, "What are you doing?" And basically, they are just starting to hike, and they don't know where the fuck they're just doing it to do it.
When they were determining where to go, because she was like, why don't we go south? And they discuss there's the Wicked Witch of the East, there's the Wicked Witch of the
Mhm.
West. And so they decide, oh, well, the Wicked Witch of the East is actually the good one. So they're going to go east.
Aw. Well, that's
But like
sweet.
at that point,
Right.
like you're hungry, you don't have cigarettes, like you lost your
Oh,
friend, you do whatever the fuck you need to
He
do.
does say
Oh,
that he
yes.
found cigarettes, and he was like, you can tell he's losing his goddamn mind.
Oh, he's
Yeah.
foolish.
Because he's like, I found it
Yeah.
in the bottom of my pack. I found some cigarettes.
Night falls, and Heather decides to do what we now know is a selfie.
A really
It's
bad
the
one.
worst angle. It is
Yeah.
right up
The
her nose.
nose.
If your husband did that, we'd all be mad.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, what? He doesn't know?
She has the camera right up her nose, and like at first it's kind of like beautiful because her eyes are gorgeous and she's crying and she's trying to do this monologue where she's apologizing to Josh's mom, to Mike's mom, to her mom, to everybody's parents, and then she says she's so sorry, and then she says she's so scared, and we see the snot bubble.
Yep.
The snot. And nobody can take their eyes off of it. It is the snot heard around the world.
And
it is
God. This moment led to so many pop culture iconic recreations.
Yes.
And it's almost impossible to accurately represent this film's impact in the late 90s, early 2000s on pop culture, on any number of things. Like how many, like I'm sure Mad TV, SNL, everybody made fun of this because while it's such an emotional, impactful moment, well, it's an emotional moment, but there is a downside to being very emotionally honest, and this is that.
We found that downside.
As funny as it is, like I really feel like it was too distracting, and they should have used another shot.
Yeah, they made it.
At that point, you're not scared. You're not considering how serious this is, that the boss of the entire operation has conceded and is telling everyone, I was so naive. And she's basically given up hope.
And you're like, ma'am, in the words of Blaine, ma'am, wipe your nose. Ma'am.
It's a big enough moment that they could have reshot it. Sam's snot bubble.
So in the dead of night, basically, she's apologized after the nose scene. They go to sleep. They hear Josh's voice again, and it's closer. And he's begging for help. And they leave their tent and they go looking for him. So they're following Josh's voice. Heather and Mike find a house in a clearing. They go inside where they see runic symbols on the wall next to child-sized handprints. They're screaming for each other. They're following each other. Josh's voice seems to be coming from inside the house somewhere. Mike goes upstairs to look for him, and then he realizes the voice is in the basement, and he rushes down the stairs. Suddenly, Mike is silent, and the camera falls, and hysterical Heather follows, sees Mike in the corner, face against the wall. Suddenly, Heather's camera is knocked down, and she is silent, and the film runs for a few seconds and dies.
Ugh,
What a fantastic fucking end to a movie. Are you
so
kidding
good.
me?
Slow
So
clap.
Oh my
good.
god. Oh. So this movie, I feel like I love found footage movies because of this movie. And I
Yeah.
love that
Yeah.
the lore that came with it. I love the marketing around it. I feel like this is what horror was meant to do. I
Yep.
feel like this is why horror movies exist, to create new mediums of terrifying people. And it really it checked off everything on the list.
Yeah.
And while I know it might not reach a 10 out of 10 out of whatever we decide in this episode, because we've all seen it so much, it genuinely scares me to this day.
Same.
It not only scared people, but it actually convinced people that something was real. A lot of people went to those woods to try to do some sort of digging to find something. In the credits, they say specifically, and I took a screenshot, it says everything in this is completely untrue. We made everything up.
Right.
Nothing is real.
But
And
nobody watches the credits. I love it.
nobody
I love
watches
it.
the
I love it.
credits.
So I mean, I love this movie. I've always loved this movie. I love the ending that it's just the self-fulfilling prophecy, but it's still somehow surprising because it's 100% the story. They went into the cottage in a pair. The boy was turned towards the corner while the other one was murdered. I love that you don't see the monster at all. Like early versions of this script included a monster that was just like a giant version of the stick figure
Yeah.
that was like chasing them through the woods.
Thank God it didn't do that.
And I'm really glad that didn't happen.
Yeah.
It does break my heart that the actors were just straight up abused for this
Yeah.
film
Oh,
to be
they-
made.
Oh yeah.
I mean, honestly, when
Um,
you read the facts about, they basically you said this, they gave them less and less food every day to get them more
Mhm.
pissy. They
Yep.
paid them $1,000 a day. They shot for 8 days, so they made $8,000.
Mhm.
And this movie made, as we said, how many millions? Now, do we
Right,
know if these actors got any
200
kind of dividends out of that? We don't know.
I
To
doubt
me,
it.
I doubt it, because nobody had any expectations that this was going to happen. But
They really worked out the lore. They really fleshed out the origin story, and even like the details that they could include were accurate. So the runes in the house were all written backwards, and backwards runes cast a negative spell against the reader. Like
okay,
they went into detail and did do things right, but were like monsters.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I wish I knew less about this movie to enjoy it.
What do we want to put this at? How many fucking piles of stones?
Dick
Or what do we
bundles.
want? Dick bundles.
Stick bundles.
How many?
Yeah.
Wait, dick bundles or stick bundles?
Stick
Dick,
bundles.
but I
Oh,
love
man,
that your
can I be a
brain goes
dick
right to
bundle?
dick.
I'm sorry.
I mean, you can write it however you please, baby girl.
I'm gonna give it a straight 8 out of
Exactly.
10 stick bundles. This
Yeah.
is really pioneer in horror. I love the marketing. I love the acting. I love the lore behind it. And I just overall, I think this has created such its own genre
Yeah.
that it can't be denied as one of
Yeah.
the best horror films in the history of horror.
I give it a 9.2. I'm gonna give it a little more than a 9, because I find that I've seen movies like Cloverfield, even in watching this movie, and I watched it today, and I have not seen it in probably arguably, like, let's say 5 years. I haven't rewatched it. And you know what? It still fucking did it for me today, as that it did it for me in my early 20s, that it did it for me in my early teens. And to me, that's a sign of not only a solid horror film, but just in general a solid film.
Right. I'm gonna go with Blaine's and say an 8.
Mm-hmm.
I think you have. I mean, obviously, we've said you have to give it accolades. It's a foundation of horror. It was totally lacking in diversity.
Yes. It was the whitest movie.
It's the whitest movie.
It did
it's
pass
the
the
most
Bechdel test,
cisgendered. It does pass the Bechdel test, but within the 13 minutes, first 13 minutes, and the rest.
It's her talking to the lady, right?
Yeah, it's her conducting the interviews.
Yeah.
But I mean, it is also a small cast, so you can't strike that against them as strongly, because I think the power dynamic of 2 men versus 1 female was important to the storyline.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
like even the actress brought a knife with her while shooting because she didn't know the men that she was going to be sleeping next to.
Fuck
So her
yeah.
fear is genuine.
It was perfect that it came out when we were young because it's the
Yes.
kind of horror movie you could watch when you were young.
Beautiful film, and I'm so glad we got to cover it. I love you guys.
Oh, hell yeah.